Hello and welcome to Westbridge Model Railway and this latest video, which I'll call my summer update, as it's essentially covering work I've done on the layout during July and August as we head into September and the autumn. So probably not a lot going on as in previous months, as the weather's been pretty reasonable outside. So I've been out quite a few of my days off filming out on the mainline, various locations, but there have been a few changes on the layout, changes I've made to the track layout in a couple of places, and there's just a few other bits of general housekeeping to keep you up to speed with. So stay tuned and I'll bring you up to speed on all of that. So one of those little jobs that needs doing is sorting out the shorting problems I'm having in a couple of locations. Now, it's not down to all the locomotives in stock, it is down to certain locos or coaches, in particular the Dapol HST set, and that's always shorting out when you're trying to cross between the up and down lines here. Now, I have got isolating joiners on the actual crossover point there, but what I'm going to do is put isolating joiners on both the down line and the up line there, so there's no chance of any current creeping across when the wheels might be bridging the gap, which seems to be happening, say, on those Dapol Intercity Mark IIIs and some other stock as well. So hopefully that will sort that problem out. So I'm just going to gently push in the Dapol Mark IIIs here, and hopefully you'll hear, because I've put the microphone right next to the track, what happens. I don't know whether it picked up that little noise there, but yeah, basically that's just tripped out. So the DCC Concepts Aegis system has cut the power out there as it's detected a short. So it's not a problem from that point of view, but of course if I was running trains, not only would that train have stopped, but every other train on the layout would have stopped as well. So needs sorting out. Switching over and putting these isolating joiners in should do that. So check back when I've done it. Another location I'm having some shorting issues with is this particular point here. It seems to be chiefly when the trains are going straight on the bi-directional freight line. Can occasionally happen when you're coming across the turnout here that takes you into the run round loop for the station. So again, I'm going to put insulating joiners in there to make sure that cuts out the possibility of any shorts there. And again, it is only with certain locos and stock it's doing that. I intend to do that at the moment, but I'm still debating about this whole layout here and the access to the shed, if it's doing quite what I want to do. So before I dig in too deep for that, I'll get my head around that and think if there's a way I can probably slightly improve this layout and access to the depot. So another little job is tidying up a few little joins like this, which were done, shall we say, early on in the days of my layout laying. So as you can see, the cuts there on the join aren't that good. Not that it's causing derailments or anything like that, but they could be obviously a lot better. So I just need to sort of straighten those up a bit and rejoin those. Again, another not very tidy joint there that needs sorting out. As for the gaps with the sleepers, that's not an issue at the moment. Obviously I shall cut some sleepers and put those into place before I actually get to the ballasting stage. This is all part of the process now of making sure everything's fine and working before we actually get to that stage. So what else is on the to-do list for this month then? Well, one of the usual jobs that needs doing pretty much every month or even more frequently is track cleaning, of course. But do you go for traditional track rubber, or do you go for a vehicle to do your track? Now with DCC, power's on all the time obviously, so far as I know from what I've read up, you can't use any sort of built-in electronic track cleaner that you can do on some normal DC layouts. So it is a case of getting down, using the track rubber, a little bit of elbow grease with that, or running the loco around with a little wagon like this with the scrubbing pad on. There are a couple of other options as well with like little gauze pads you can use as well. I'm looking at trying one of those, but I'd be interested to know how anybody else who's running DCC layouts gets on with their track cleaning and which they find is the best method to use. So if you want to let me know and pop that down in the comments below, that'd be great. And of course another little job associated with track cleaning and that general sort of thing is to make sure you have a good hoover around the layout. So time to bring out the old dust buster every now and then. Make sure you go around the layout and hoover up anything you may have left behind by accident. Number of times I've missed the odd track pin or a tiny bit of an offcut of track or something where I've been doing some track work and it's got stuck in the track or in the points. Obviously if you get stuck in something like the points, you're going to get a short out will be one thing. It might even derail a locomotive is another option. So after you've done any sort of work like that, it's always worth going around with a hoover, certainly on the sections that you've been working on, and make sure there's nothing that's going to derail or damage your trains. So the main focus of this video will be changes I've made to the Heritage line, or specifically the eastern side of the Heritage line as you head from the station down the single track line behind me here. So let's just go and take a closer look at what's going on there. So if we start at the station, the Intercity 47 there is sitting on the shared Heritage platform in the station, and if that were to head eastbound or any other DMU or steam loco for instance, it would come out of the station there. A couple of turnouts there would take you into the stabling and carriage sidings for the Heritage line, but otherwise you'd carry on underneath the bridge, running parallel to the two main lines, and then it would dive into a single track tunnel section there, which would then be hidden underneath the hill, and there's a section there where you can see class 142 just stable at the end there. Now this would have been ideal just for running a Heritage DMU backwards and forwards along there, or the Prairie for instance with the auto coach. Never going to take a full coach train and you've got nowhere to run around obviously with a steam loco. But the problem I've sort of found running things around is when you come back round into the station, your only access then is really to the Heritage platform and carry on down to the Heritage line, unless you reverse out onto the main line back in the direction you came. Now I wanted a little bit more flexibility and I've decided not to just run Heritage trains down this line. I've run in various DMUs, so 150s, 153s, 158s, 159s, etc. So those I don't want to continue on down the Heritage line. So if we come back to the junction, what I'm going to do is put turnouts in just there, so you'll be able to cross from the single track line. That will then take you onto the westbound main line, so you'd then be able to come through into the station and access the main line and carry on running around the layout. So let's have a closer look here at the plan for the crossover from the single track branch line to what is the down main line. So we're going to drop a turnout in just there, short section of track in there, and then another turnout there, and then once they're connected there'll be isolating joiners there, there and there, which should prevent any of the shorts and arcing issues I'm getting on other sections, because this section of track will be able to take power from the turnout here. This one has a dropper in here. There's power off to the right on the main line here, so whichever way you're going you'll have a feed of power from the dropper, but where the potential shorts are, the isolating joiners should cut any problems out there that certain stock are creating. Right, so that's everything laid and connected. Won't pin everything down yet, because I think it's always a good idea just to make sure everything connects properly before you pin down. So let's bring a loco in and just see, make sure everything still works. Little touch there, so that probably just needs pinning down. Let's see what it's like over the new connection. Interesting. Right, so probably would have been an idea to use my track tester first before I loco, so just to show you that. Here we go. Pop it on there. All three lights were good. Same on that section there. Same on the section around the back. Point on the main, being very careful not to trip it out. On there. But once we go up to where the 68 is, no power. No power there, because that's taking the feed from there. Now, the interesting bit is, other than cutting this section of track here a little bit shorter, not changed anything on the other side, and there's a dropper just out of sight in the tunnel, which is still where the power is coming from, but for some reason that's dead as well. So I've tried powering the 142 up at the end, and that's not running. So I'm assuming somewhere, and I have no idea why, that dropper section there has failed, either with a dodgy connection either onto the bus wire or onto the track. So yes, I'm completely dead on power at the minute. Not the end of the world. It wouldn't probably hurt to stick a dropper power section in here. So as I've not pinned everything down, that's what I think we'll do. We'll cut a little section out there, put some dropper wires in, and then connect it to the bus, and then we'll definitely have power there. So just a quick little job there, just to put those dropper wires in on that join there, connect them up to the bus wire below, track voltage tester, there we go. Then we'll just bring the 68 in just to make sure it does run over fine. So I think that all looks good now. So yes, it would appear that either my solder connection is dodgy on the track, which having had a look at it doesn't appear to be, or it could be a failure of one of those Scotch lock clips underneath on the section of the track that's in the tunnel. So hopefully now, having put these droppers in here, that takes out that problem anyway, because it's only a dead end when you go around the corner anyway. But then that's maybe a little bit concerning, but obviously there are a lot of Scotch lock clips around the layout. Just something I'll have to monitor, which is part of the reason why I didn't want too many isolating breaks, because if you do have a problem, you've got to then go and add another power section of droppers in that section there. But yeah, something we'll have to keep a close eye on. So all I need to do to finish this section now is just make sure everything's aligned correctly and then pin everything down and we're good to go. So I'll crack on with that. So moving on to the station and the heritage platform in particular now, as you can just see at the back there, there's a class 37 in there with a rake of 7 coaches on, which easily fits into the platform to where the turnout is to the main line there. You could get an 8 coach train in there actually if you wanted. But the line at the back was essentially the run round line for the heritage line, which accesses just down to the carriage sheds there. And swinging back this way, branches off down there to what will be the turntable and then the heritage branch around the back. But it'd be a bit more flexible as I can run trains on the run round line there if I could access the main line, which I can't here. You can only access the heritage branch or the carriage shed. So what we're going to do, just drop in those points there, and obviously that means we can then cross over and access the main line. So much more flexibility there. Obviously when I'm bringing heritage trains off, because they, rather than just shuttle backwards and forwards, they do want to run on the main line every now and then, and that still leaves enough room there to get a loco on the back of that 7 coach train if I want, that won't actually fail with the crossover. And if I'm running shorter trains, which probably would be typically 6 coaches, I can also get a DMU, a 2-car DMU on the back of that. So next job, install those points. So that didn't take long, all went in fairly well. Just a case of making sure you're cutting the tracks to length. A little bit of trimming required to get the tight bits in, especially the section of track here where you're fitting between several points, but it's all gone in okay. Tested it with a voltmeter, everything's all connected. We've got power to all sections. So if I just bring the class 37 in, as though it's come off the heritage line, you'll see that appearing to your right. So that will pull in and stop well before the crossover there. Although you can't see the other end of the train, there's room for another coach within the platform and a loco on the end, and that's a 7 coach rake, so that still works out fine. If I just select another loco, what we'll do now, so coming off the carriage shed and stabling sidings to your left now, we'll bring the class 50 in. So that's also given us this handy little spot there for stabling a loco. so that could be swapping over with the 37 there that's just come in on a train, for instance. And a quick couple more changes of the points and another loco select. I'm coming off the carriage sheds again now. I've got the 101 DMU this time, and this will just run around between the 50 and the 37. So that's now dropped onto what was just basically the run round loop, and that could now head straight down to the branch line. So as you can hopefully see there, that's brought a great deal more flexibility into that section of the layout. So the next little change, quite a minor one, this one though, this is the carriage shed, 2 road sidings as you come out of the station on the opposite end of the heritage line. What I'm just going to do here is add another point in there. So that's effectively going to give me 3 roads, but then what I'll be doing is bringing the carriage shed over that way. So this track here that the 2 DMUs are on will be on the outside of the carriage shed, and then you'll have 2 roads inside the carriage shed. I think they'll look quite nice with those along the front, and also being a corner there, it's more of a logical break and a dead end to that section there as well. So there we go, that's in. And what I've decided to do is put isolating joiners there and have a power feed going in there, and then do the same on these 2 lines here. Definitely won't get a conflict there now, and also I think it's better for when you've got locos running in and out of there if they've got direct power. The only thing is I've only got a couple of Scotch lock clips left, so for now I can only power this track. So obviously I'll just have to shut some coaches or something in there for now because it won't take a loco. And then on the back end we've just got a buffer stop on here on this track, and then I've got a little bit of foam because you won't see that once you drop the carriage shed in. And then obviously if I'm a little bit heavy-handed running a train in there or something, it's not going to damage the buffers or coupling, hopefully, with that there. Right, well, not good news, as you're just about to see. Dead. And if I put that on, nothing. Now, not sure whether it's my soldering on the track joints there, or whether it's going to be a problem with the Scotch locks underneath where they've not made good contact, but obviously I've got something there which I need to look at. Food first, I think. No, don't want to get hangry, do we? Right, catch you in a bit. Right, well that was annoying me, so I did have a quick look just before I went to get some lunch, and as you can now hopefully see, problem solved. So what that was, it was the red wire, the dropper wire and the Scotch lock clip on that. It wasn't fully bent over, so basically the metal join was slightly to one side, and it had gone through the bus wire but not gone through the dropper wire. So luckily I had one spare Scotch lock clip, so I've just replaced that, and as you can see, that sorted the problem. So if you can see that there, that's the Scotch lock clip where there was a problem with, and as you might just be able to make out, the actual metal blade is slightly bent, so obviously I didn't get a square on contact when I was squeezing that down, so it only actually broke the bus wire and didn't actually go through into the dropper wire as well. So that's why I've had the problem where we didn't have the power going to that side in there. And as you can't take that off, I've had to put another Scotch lock clip just alongside instead. And obviously, as you've seen, that is now working. So just something to be aware of there. When you consider how many there are on the layout, I suppose that's the first time that's happened is not a bad thing really. So yeah, just something to be aware of if you're using that sort of Scotch-Lock clip. Yes, I think that should work okay. Once that's all detailed and scenic bits added to that, I think that'll look okay like that. But while I'm here, the 108 in the front, that's just a recent eBay purchase and a real bargain, especially when you consider this. Yep, another sound fitted loco there. Really decided I needed to have one of the classic first generation DMUs, as I remember those from when I was a kid, bashing them between sort of Kettering and Bletchley and Bedford and various other lines where you could sit behind the driver. So yeah, that was a real good find on eBay. Well, that's summer done then. So what does that mean next? Well, autumn obviously, but what does that mean for me and the layout? Well, with the shorter days and the weather in theory not being quite as nice, that means more opportunity to crack on a bit more on here as opposed to getting out and filming on the real railway. So there's not too much to do track work wise now, just a few little areas to tidy up and still that heritage section with the turntable to do at some point. But what I'll look to start doing is probably a little bit of scenic work as well, certainly on the sections where I'm happy with the track how it all is. So I need to plan for the tunnel section in particular. Over the back there is a big thing to do before any ballasting or anything occurs. I need to sort of make that, I think I'm going to do it. Certainly want it to be accessible so I can take off a section and get to the track if I need to. So that's something I'll be looking at doing fairly soon. The town area behind the station, that's something that's going to be need to done before I even decide on doing the station itself and ballasting and any work in that area, because you've got to lean over the station and that area to do that. So that's something else that needs looking at. A few other little projects I've got. We're coming up to the water cannon season, so I have some 3D printed RHTT sets there. Obviously they'll need spraying, decals adding, and they go on FEA flats. So there's a bit of a project to be done there. I would think I won't be ready for this RHTT season. And I've got things like some of the older coaches. I brought some vinyls and things to change liveries on those to bring them up to more appropriate liveries for the era on modelling. So there's something else there we'll talk about. As we're getting into the autumn and winter as well, lighting is one thing. I haven't got very good lighting in here for when it's dark, so that's something that needs to be looked into so that the layout's illuminated nicely, but if you want it to be really nice and professional looking, you don't want too many shadows behind the logos. So it's a case of how am I going to do the lights with that? Are they literally going to have to be high on the ceiling sort of strip lights? I'm going to go for LED lights. Something there we need to look at. So hopefully plenty of interest to keep coming over there over the coming months there. So if you've liked this, please take a moment just to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already for updates on this and all my real world railway updates. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.